All right, let's get right into it. In this explainer, we're going to break down one single, absolutely critical courtroom hearing, a hearing where a plea deal, which should have been a way out, actually turned into a legal trap with no escape. And, as you'll see, it all came down to one unbelievable admission.
And here it is. This is the moment we're talking about. The smoking gun. You've got an attorney standing up in open court, and he basically admits his client had a prescription for the very drug she's accused of trafficking. I mean, wow. So the big question is, how on earth does a case with a flaw that big even get to this point? To really get what happened, we've got to rewind the clock. See, this whole courtroom blow-up didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was the end result of a long series of failures that basically turned this entire case into a ticking time bomb. And it all started with the defense's own, well, neglect. Okay, so picture this. It's months earlier, April 20th, 2023. The prosecutor, he's had enough. He stands up and calls out the defense for doing, well, nothing for 16 months. He calls their strategy a truant approach. And the defense attorney, Jonathan Mills, his response on the record is just, yeah, I'll take fault for that. Just like that. And what's really wild is that this happened in the same hearing. Mills starts negotiating this plea deal, while his own client, Kelli Lynch, is told to wait out in the hallway. And inside, the prosecutor makes it crystal clear, on the record, that this deal means a 3-year mandatory minimum prison sentence. Lynch has no idea. She's not even in the room. Yeah, so that hallway deal, it basically set the stage for a massive disconnect. The plea that Lynch eventually signed on June 23rd was built on 2 totally different versions of reality. And, well, you can guess that was a recipe for disaster. And this really shows you just how catastrophic that misunderstanding was. You've got 2 completely different realities here. In Lynch's world, she thinks her cooperation means she might get probation, maybe house arrest. Her friend even texts her lawyer saying she doesn't score out to prison now, it looks. But the court's reality? Nope. It was a solid, non-negotiable 3-year mandatory prison sentence. 2 different planets. And you can just hear the confusion and pressure in Kelli's own words from that later hearing. She says, I really didn't understand what I was signing. She felt like she never even got a chance to actually go over it with her own lawyer. Think about that.
And the disconnect was just off the charts. It was so bad that during the plea hearing in June, it was actually the prosecutor who had to stop everything and make sure Lynch knew about the mandatory minimums. Her own attorney said nothing. That single moment, that failure, just set the whole thing up for the explosion that was about to happen.
Okay, so this brings us right back to that day, October 4th, 2023. Kelli Lynch walks into court for her sentencing, all based on that really shaky plea. And the second the hearing starts, boom, the state comes out swinging. I mean, right out of the gate, the prosecutor is just on the attack. He says Lynch's cooperation, the whole reason for the deal, is worthless. Then he calls her a flight risk just for being late and demands she be locked up immediately. And this is after he admitted the case had just fallen off his radar for months. Talk about setting a hostile tone. And we need to remember what's at stake here. The biggest, most serious charge against Lynch was drug trafficking. We're talking a first-degree felony, really serious penalties. That single charge was the state's entire leverage in this whole thing. It's the hammer they were holding over her head. And then it happens. The hearing is just spiraling out of control, and her own lawyer, Jonathan Mills, just drops this bomb. In open court, on the record, he reveals that the whole trafficking charge is basically nonsense. He admits she has a valid prescription for the drug. But listen really carefully to the words he uses when he talks to the judge. He says, you remember, right? That is so important. He's not telling the judge something new. He's reminding him of something he thinks the judge and the prosecutor already know. It's a huge tell. So, in legal terms, that prescription is what's called exculpatory evidence. It's a fancy way of saying it's evidence that tends to prove someone is innocent. And the law is super clear. The prosecution has to disclose that stuff. So this admission, it didn't just poke a hole in the state's case. It completely demolished their biggest charge. All right, so back to that crazy October 4th hearing. After that smoking gun moment, Lynch says, okay, I want to withdraw my plea. And this is where the judge steps in to solve the problem and ends up creating a situation that's just completely impossible. The second Kelli Lynch asks to take back her plea, Judge Diego Madrigal hits back with an incredible amount of pressure. He pulls out a calculator, basically, and tells her what her maximum sentence could be if she fights and loses. 80 years. And then he tells her that the state's 3-year deal is a bargain. He says, and I'm quoting, that the prosecutor is far kinder than he is. The message couldn't be clearer. Take this broken deal, or I'll make sure you get something much, much worse. And it wasn't just the judge. The pressure was coming from every direction. The prosecutor then threatens that if she withdraws her plea, he'll refile all the original charges, including the trafficking charge, the very same one they all now knew, on the record, had no basis in fact. Just unbelievable. So the hearing is just pure chaos at this point, and the judge decides he's going to take charge. And in one of the most bizarre moments you'll ever hear in a courtroom, he decides to, quote, vanilla ice. Yeah, the rapper. He tells everyone, you got a problem, I'll solve it, declaring himself the problem solver. But here's the thing about his solution. It created a huge legal trap. Even the judge admitted it. He recognized that by trying to withdraw her plea, Lynch was basically accusing her own lawyer of being ineffective. The judge called it a built-in conflict, and he knew that Mills couldn't ethically argue a motion that was all about his own mistakes. So this is how the judge's solution turns into this perfect checkmate procedural trap. Look at this. Step 1, he tells Lynch she has to file a really complex legal motion. Step 2, he acknowledges her lawyer has a conflict and can't do it. Step 3, he orders that same lawyer to get off the case ASAP. So what's the catch? Step 4, Lynch, now with no lawyer, has to somehow file this motion herself in just 19 days. It's an impossible situation. And don't just take my word for it. This isn't some interpretation. This is the official court order from that day. You can see it right there, plain as day in the minutes. Motion to be filed by 10/23/23, a hard, undeniable deadline for a woman who the court had just left without a lawyer. There's a really powerful analogy to describe this whole mess. It's like you take your car to a mechanic and he admits he never actually fixed the brakes. Then he tells you that you have 19 days to write the entire technical repair manual for the car yourself, right before he snatches your phone and jumps out while the car is still moving. That's what this was like.
So this whole case leaves us with a really, really unsettling question. And it's bigger than just this one defendant. It's about a system where plea deals can be twisted or known innocence can be used as a bargaining chip. The rules of the court are supposed to be guardrails, right? They're there to make sure justice is served. But what happens? What's the remedy when those very same rules are used to build a trap that has no exit?